I think, honestly, I think a twin-born. This
Yeah.
is going to cause I think a twin-born is better, depending on the mixes. But I think a twin-born is better than a Mistborn.
Ooh.
Ooh,
Yeah.
well,
What's up, my nerd?
Welcome, everyone, to the Credible Nerds podcast. My name is Justin, and we are here with the Cosmere commentary today. We are going to be continuing our series of the Mistborn original trilogy, Mistborn books 1 through 3. Today we'll be talking Mistborn book 2, Well of Ascension. And way back in the day, we all read this, and so now we're doing a reread to kind of catch up and kind of revisit this story in preparation, ultimately in preparation for Stormlight's Archive Book 5 that'll be coming out later this year, I think end of November, maybe December. So we'll be continuing on till we get to that point. And so thanks for joining us. My name is Justin, and I am here with my fellow Mistings, Mark and Kyle. How are you guys?
Good. How about you?
Pretty good.
I'm Mistborn, by the way.
Oh, you're Mistborn.
Oh,
Okay. You've upgraded.
Yes.
You took the pill and
that's
got
true.
upgraded.
That's what it wasn't prescriptions. It was Laracium. That's what it was. Very nice.
Yeah. Okay, so last time we talked about the Final Empire Book 1, so go back and check out that podcast episode. We talked about some good things, had some good comments there, so check it out. Like our channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel, comment on the videos. If we're talking about stuff, you're like, oh, that's stupid. You guys don't know what you're talking about. Let us know, correct us so we can get it right, because we are the credible nerds. We want to be credible. We want to get it right. But we do get things wrong here and there, and we try to make those corrections. I think last time we made one mid episode, we were talking about how there wasn't an ATM misting, and Kyle looked it up and corrected us. So if you find something like that, let us know, and we'll get it changed. But this one, we will be talking about what happens after they kill the Lord Ruler. We had a good discussion about that last time as far as, is the Lord Ruler a good ruler, or did he suck? But we're going to find out what happens in his absence. And kind of a quick rundown of this book to refresh your memory. If you haven't read it for a while, we will be doing spoilers. So if you haven't read it and you're listening to this, you might want to go read the book first. And the spoilers, not only this book, this series, but pretty much anything that has been written in the Cosmere up to this point, May 2024, is fair game. So we'll try to warn you up front, but that's where we're at now. So like I said, last episode, we talked about the Final Empire, and Lord Ruler was killed. And that ends up being a vacancy of power, a vacuum of power is created. So Elend Venture is brought in. He becomes the ruler of Luthadel, the city there, and he starts to kind of create a new government that includes the Ska, the poor people, the trodden down, the less fortunate, those people who are being ignored. Tries to include everybody in the government. It's a big switch for a lot of people. So there's a lot of conflict that's, this, especially the first half of this book, but this book is a lot of political commentary about this law and how we're going to implement this, and do the Ska have rights, and how are the nobles going to handle all this. And so it's very interesting. It's very well written, but it's kind of boring in the sense that not a lot is going on, but you do get, I was entertained and read it, but it's like, okay. And every once in a while there's an action sequence here and there. So that's kind of cool.
Lots of political intrigue.
Yes. Political thriller, in fact.
Yeah.
Possibly, potentially. But yeah, 3 armies show up because they hear the Lord Ruler is dead. Like, okay, we're going to take over this city. One of them is Elend's father, Strafe Venture, who's a total jerk, one of those guys. And he's here to take over the city because he fled the city earlier in the last book with a tail between his legs, and now he's back. He was like, oh, my son's in charge. I got this. I can come over. Come and take over, no problem. There's also a Colas army, who are these big, powerful mutant type guys. They're led by Elend's friend, Jastus, Jastus.
Jastes?
Jastes, yeah. And he has figured out how to control them because up until this point they've been hard to control. Only the Lord Ruler could. And then there's another guy, another noble from one of the outlying provinces, Ashwither Set. He comes with his army. So there's a big standoff. And our heroes are stuck in the main city trying to figure out what to do. There's also a spy in the midst of our heroes. They find bones of someone. There's this new species that was kind of introduced last book, the Kandra, and we learned a little bit about them, but we get into it more this book as well as the next book. But Or-Sewer, is that how you say it?
I think so.
He is a Kandra that was on the team, the team of Kelsier, and he's helping them out, but they find bones of another Kandra, or not of the Kandra, but a Kandra who ate someone and left the bones, right? And so there's a spy, and it's like a shapeshifter type thing. So that's one of the main plots of the book is who's the spy, and Vin's trying to figure it out by talking to him, and the Kandra can't use Allomancy, so she's testing people to see if they can still use their Allomancy to figure out if it's them or not. So that was a storyline there. There's also a new character, Zane, who is a Mistborn. He's this mysterious guy, but then we find out later as the story progresses that he's on Team Venture. He's with Strafe. He's also Strafe's son, as well as Elend's half-bastard brother. And so he's trying to persuade Vin to join the dark side, his side, and run away with him. And Strafe wants Zane to kill her, but he doesn't want to because he likes her. Vin's like, oh, I think I kind of like him because he can understand me, and we're both Mistborn. We can relate that way. So that's another plot throughout the whole story, is what she's going to do. There's kind of a love triangle there. Then we also got Sazed, the Terrace man, who he left after the Lord Ruler was killed to go teach the people, teach the Ska. So he's out there doing that, and he discovers that the mists that are there that come out at night are starting to come during the day and killing certain people, which has never happened before. So that's another mystery he's got to solve. And he has a friend, Tindwyl, who shows up to teach. He has a friend, Tindwyl, who shows up to teach the Elend how to be a ruler, because he's kind of he's not there yet. Let's just say.
No.
He's very passive, and people can run over him. So Tindwyl shows up at the request of Sazed to teach him how to have a stronger backbone and kind of be more imperialistic and challenge people and stuff. So we got that storyline going on. What else? So later on, we find out that Or-Sewer is actually dead because another Kandra, Tensoon, instead of eating another human, he actually ate Or-Sewer, his fellow Kandra. And so then Tensoon's been working with Zane, and Zane and Tensoon ambush Vin, and Vin ends up being able to plead to Tensoon and actually use Allomancy to get him to attack Zane, and Vin kills Zane.
Yes.
Overcomes him. So that, and then she decides, right before that, she decides she likes Elend. So then she goes and tells him, and they actually get married there in the book.
Yeah,
So
like on the spot, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's do it. They like each other. Must be marriage.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a big deal when she takes over Tensoon, because Tensoon's Straff's Kandra.
Yeah, has a different contract.
Totally different contract from Or-Sewer, right? Mm-hmm. And so he eats Or-Sewer and pretends to be Or-Sewer with Vin, and has been like, her Kandra, quote unquote, the whole time, pretending to be her Kandra the whole time. And so he's aware of everything.
Yeah.
And then when Vin compels him to attack Zane, like that's a heck of a lot of power.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but
yeah, that was a big moment because at the beginning they didn't like each other.
Right.
And then they start to work together. Tensoon, who's pretending to be Or-Sewer, starts to like her, and because of that relationship, he switches sides basically.
Mm-hmm.
becomes a traitor to his own people, but serves Vin. Then on the outside, you got Strafe and Set and the Koloss. They attack and don't attack, and then that whole thing gets worked out where Vin kills Strafe, Elend kills his friend Jastes, and Vin is able to learn how to take control of the Koloss with her Allomancy, the same way she did with the Kandra. And then Set, he ends up pledging loyalty to Elend, who then becomes the Emperor, as all these armies are defeated and brought under the power of the good guys. So we got all that. And then Vin realizes the Well of Ascension is there in Luthadel itself. So they go find it, Vin, Elend, and Spook. And on the way, there's a mist guy, ghost guy, who leads them there. And Vin actually partakes of the well, the power of the well, because the mist ghost kills or tries to kill Elend to convince Vin to heal Elend with that power that she takes. But instead, she lets it loose into the world because that was the prophecy. And we find out that was a wrong prophecy. Misled. And so, but then they're able to find a bead of Lerasium to give to Elend, and he's able to heal himself. And now he's a Mistborn. Dun, dun, dun. So that's kind of a lengthy, quick overview of the story. So, Kyle, what was some of the things you liked about this thing? What's as far as what do you want to bring up for us today?
There's a lot, like we mentioned at the beginning. This book is kind of seen as kind of the lull between the two a lot of the time.
Yeah,
and so there's.
Sorry.
We'll edit that out. Repeat.
I accidentally called someone on the phone. I go to the I'm like, oh.
We got a live caller on the line.
We got a live caller. Excellent.
What'd you think about Well of Ascension?
And so, okay. So this book is kind of seen as the lull between the two, right? And the interesting thing, though, is depending on how you define what's exciting, this book can be actually really exciting because it kind of builds up to what we see, the kind of the cataclysmic events that are going to happen in book 3.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of study, research, and understanding that slowly dawns on a lot of the main characters that build up to the catastrophes that they start experiencing in the next book, right? And it's kind of a story of they find out, but just a little bit too late, again and again and again and again, right? Yeah. And so one of those classic moments kind of comes from the relationship between Sazed and Tindwyl.
Yeah.
Right? And so Sazed and Tindwyl, both Terracemen, right? And because of that, we're both, persecuted under the Lord Ruler's empire. Mm-hmm. Right? And so Tindwyl was actually, placed in some of the breeding programs, and that's pretty, awful.
Yeah.
If you think about that, right? And became obviously, an object for the Lord Ruler to be able to breed out Feruchemy from the Terrace population. And then Sazed is a eunuch, right? And so he was never able to have children and never will have children, right? And, is kind of self-conscious about that, quite frankly, and resentful, right?
Would be. Yeah.
Oh, who wouldn't be, And so consequently, you have Tindwyl, who comes to Luthadel, actually at Sazed's request, I wouldn't say it Sazed tells Tindwyl about what happens in Luthadel, and given Tindwyl's background and what she specializes in, she comes to train Elend on how to be a leader, right? And ultimately, while she's there, obviously, like Justin mentioned, Sazed comes back because of the things that are happening, and Sazed and Tindwyl start talking, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of interesting back and forth around. Tindwyl Tindwyl has a begrudging respect for Sazed, right? Says that he's the most what's the word I'm looking for?
Rebellious, maybe.
Yeah, but he's like rebellious without a backbone, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't stand up for himself, and when Tindwyl challenges him on facts and things like that, he's like, "Oh, okay, you're probably right."
Yeah, he backs down.
Yeah, he backs down, but it doesn't make him, agree with her.
Mm-hmm.
He just backs down and doesn't defend himself, right? On the flip side, he has the utmost respect for Tindwyl because she is a very strong leader. She's on the synod, the synod, something
Synod.
the synod. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the leadership group with the Terracemen, and she's very well rounded in leadership and everything else like that, and so consequently, they kind of go back and forth and start developing this relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
I got the impression they kind of liked each other before, like way back in the day.
That's a good question. I
thought that's what I got out of it. So
probably.
But they didn't pursue it because of their situation.
Oh, exactly.
At the time.
She was probably about ready to go into the breeding program, or pregnant, or right?
Yeah.
And he was serving one noble or another as a Terraceman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or more or less a glorified butler, right? And so, anyways, they kind of start to fall in love over the research that Sazed has them start looking at. And so, like we said, Sazed comes running back to the capital after he finds that the mists are killing people, right? And on the way back, right, he's with Marsh, right? And they go to the conventicle of Saren.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Were the obligators?
The obligators. Right? No, not the obligators.
The other ones.
The inquisitors.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the base of the inquisitors, right? And everything's in metal there. And so Sazed comes across this big metal sheet that has a rubbing. Or not has it doesn't have it has an inscription on it, and he takes a rubbing of it, right? And I think it's an entry from Quan or something like that, right? That really kind of tells the story, or more of the story, as to why Quan told Rashik to mislead Elendi, right? That plus Quan's or the what they called the Lord Ruler's diary in the last book it wasn't the Lord Ruler, it was Quan's, right? And so anyways, he's trying to analyze that to try and figure out, because he has a sneaking suspicion that they may have released something when they killed the Lord Ruler.
Yeah, something happened.
Something bad happened, right? So he and Tindwyl kind of start falling in love and really enjoying studying together. And as they start studying, they start finding out that there's inconsistencies with Elendi's writing and what would make sense, right?
What Quan's saying.
And kind of what Quan's saying. So, for example, it says Quan feared the deepness, right? If Quan feared the deepness, why did he try to, why did he try to stop Elendi's quest to defeat it, right?
Yeah.
They discussed, what were Quan's motives and reasonings for asking Rashik to kill Elendi, right? And so there's, inconsistency around, thinking that Elendi would take the power for himself, but knowing that, if you read Elendi's background, he obviously wouldn't, right? He's kind of like Vin, right? He was going to be one of those people to release it, right? And so you start to notice as they study more and other things happen, they kind of discover after a little while that all the copies they've made of that inscription have been altered, right? And as we find out later, by Ruin, right? And kind of what tips them off is there's a little section of each one of those rubbings that have been torn.
It's always the same.
The
wording.
literal exact same place, right? And so all their copies, even the one that Sazed has locked away in a chest, the original rubbing that he got out of the conventicle of Saren, has been altered or has been torn, right? Yeah. And so they start to piece together, Ruin has the ability to change writing, to change prophecy, and to twist
History.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the only way to prevent him from doing that is by having inscriptions in metal, right? Which is why in the Conventicle of Saren, it was written in metal, right?
Yeah.
Because there it couldn't be altered. And so anyways, because of that, again, they find that out a lot of the times just a little bit too late to do something about it, right? Sazed doesn't even put all that together until after Vin has released the power at the Well of Ascension.
Well, he puts it together and then he starts running to go stop her.
That's right. He runs to go stop her, but gets there, and Marsh
is there
and keeps him from intervening. And so, anyways, that kind of transitions us to what happened at the Well of Ascension, where Vin, like you mentioned, Vin, Spook, and Elend go down and find the power, and this is kind of where it gets interesting, and you start seeing how in the physical realm and the cognitive realm, trying to prevent cataclysmic events take place, right? And so in the last book we found out, or as we saw, Kelsier dies, right? Lord Ruler kills him, and he goes to the cognitive realm and convinces Preservation to let him stick around. But
see what happens.
Exactly, so he can kind of watch and see what happens. But he gets stuck in the well.
In the actual well, yeah.
Exactly.
His spirit or his consciousness.
His cognitive shadow of some sort, right?
That's what it is.
And so he can't go anywhere. All he can do is observe. While he's there, he discovers ruin, right? And so he looks and he finds him, and he's this vast, awful, scary thing, right? And puts two and two together after kind of encountering and having conversations with Preservation and even encountering Hoyt at one point.
Yeah.
Right? That the well is a prison for ruin, and that giving the power of the well back to the people or the well is essentially giving the power to ruin and allowing him to escape, right?
Yeah.
And so consequently, Vin and Elend, they show up at the well, and kind of like what you talked about, this mist spirit is actually Preservation, right? Or the last vestiges of Preservation, because as we learn in this book, Preservation is slowly dying, right? And I think his name was Laris or something like that, hence Laracium, right? So Preservation is slowly dying, and he's trying to prevent ruin from being set free. And so as Vin and Elend approach the well, Kelsier actually takes the hand of Laris, right, aka Preservation, and slashes Elend, right? And that's the mist spirit slashing Elend open in an attempt to make Vin use her power to heal Elend, right? And obviously we find out that doesn't work, and
she almost does.
She
thinks about it. She's like, no, the prophecy is I got to release it.
Right. And that was all based off of Ruin twisting the prophecy.
So she makes the decision to let her friend die. Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just agreeing. I was the same one.
Okay. Yeah. So she agrees to let her friend die to save the people, to save the world.
Right.
Right. But that's like the opposite of what was supposed to happen. So then you got Kelsier, who's like, well, I'll sacrifice Elend so Vin will do the right thing. But that doesn't work. And then it's just this weird, like, everybody's making the choice that they think is best, but it's the wrong choice.
Right.
And it's just really interesting to think about all the different parts that are being played.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and kind of sets us up for a lot of the cataclysmic events in Book 3, because Ruin gets released and starts wreaking all havoc across
I'm free.
Exactly.
I'm out of here.
And so, yeah, those are the two primary things I wanted to bring up, in that, the Terrace people have been kind of the keepers of the quote unquote true religion, right, for centuries, right? And ironically, Sazed is a gatherer of religions, right? All but really his own, right, which happens to be the real one. And through that happens to be the one that has been blocked out by the Lord Ruler and twisted by Ruin, such that sets up the events to ultimately fulfill what happened at the well. And so,
yeah. That was pretty well. That's pretty succinct. I liked it because I think as you're reading the story, all that detail can get lost
Right.
in the narrative and the story and all these other cool things that are going on. So you'll be able to bring it together in that way. I think it's pretty good. So it's very helpful. What do you think, Mark? Did Vin do the right thing? Should she have healed Elend?
This one's a tough one.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, it all worked out in the end.
Okay. Yeah, I think it did. What would have been different, or I don't know. What do you think?
I think my problem with this is this: any other time, except for this moment, she wouldn't have healed him.
True. Right? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
You look at book 1, you look at early book 2, she never would have done it.
Even book 3, where she's more hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that she should she have done it? Yes. At that point in her life, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, I think it's a terrible decision. Mm-hmm. And it's stupid how it all lines up to that moment at that time. Because any other moment, any other time, she doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, they just gotten married. She's like finally decided, I'm not going to be with Zane. I'm going to be with Elend. And then, like a couple hours later, this happens. So,
could you say she did I don't know. Did she do the right thing for the wrong reasons? No, I think it's the other way around. No. I think she did the wrong thing for the right reasons.
Yeah.
She did the wrong thing for the right reasons. Yes, that was worth doing it for. But dang it, of all the times that you had to trust, of all the times you had to love, of all the times you had to feel accepted and not be in your head and like, oh, my brother left me and, peanuts don't even like it. Right? Of all those times, this is the one moment you cast all that aside. Mm-hmm. And it's the one moment that had the most to lose or win.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
So, did she do the right thing? Sure. Morally sure.
Well,
but no.
If she had healed Elend, what would have happened? Then Ruin's captive again for another 1,000 years, and they kind of just go on their life. We don't have that those big events at the end of book 3 happen, right?
That's true, but preservation was still dying. Right? Even with Ruin captive, because part of him, because they're an even match, and part of him was invested to keep Ruin in prison, and so he wasn't at full power, so therefore they tipped the scales in Ruin's favor. So I think preservation still would have died, right? Perhaps not as swiftly, but...
Why was she dying again?
So I think
I can't remember.
I think it's because the balance was tipped, right? Because he used some of his power to imprison Ruin, right? He did not have the capability to outlast Ruin's presence. You guys are gonna have to look me up on that one.
Yeah, but
I'm pretty sure that's why.
Yeah, well, that's all explained in book 3, so we'll definitely cover it next time. I'm just wondering if you'd remember it or not, because I don't.
Okay. So anyways, I think preservation still would have died, and it would really have depended on what Vin did after she healed Elend, right? Would she have had the wherewithal to kind of do what, Sazed does later, right? And fixing the world and all that stuff. We'll talk about that in book 3.
Yeah.
Or does she just kind of keep things, in my opinion, she probably keeps things pretty status quo.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? She may have done something for the ska, maybe a little bit, right? But she probably elevates her and Elend to godlike status, right? Or even, emperor, lord ruler like status, and perhaps is a bit of a more benevolent ruler than the lord ruler.
Yeah, That's a good point. Do they become the new Lord Ruler, but nicer, but still status quo, like you said?
Right. That's my opinion. I think that's what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, so we're introduced to a new magic. Well, it's not really new. We get more explanation about a different magic system that's been in existence for a while called Feruchemy. And last time we talked about Allomancy, which was the use of metals to give yourself power, using the investiture within to do awesome things. But Feruchemy is a little different. So a lot of similarities in the sense the power that is used, but it's used differently. So, Mark, do you have some thoughts on Feruchemy?
Yeah, Feruchemy. Okay, so this is kind of cool. I like it and I don't.
Okay, I can agree.
So basically, what you do is you store, I don't know, your investiture, right? Mm-hmm. Which is like, I don't know, your power, whatever it is, into a metal mine is what it's called. You got a piece of metal. I'm not going to go into like the different metal mines. There's like, pure metal mines and like unpure metal mines and, blah, 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 blah. That kind of gets a little crazy. Yeah. So what you do is, I'm not actually sure, like the process, right? Like what you just think it and it happens. You holding the metal mine.
It's the same as with the metals. You just burn it, right?
Feruchemy,
you just store it.
Yeah, like it just happens, right?
Yeah.
And so what you do is like you have different, the metals, right? Iron, steel, tin, pewter, copper, but they all do different things. And for example, Sazed is a copper mind, so he can store his memories into, this metal, metal mind, and then he can access them whenever. Mm-hmm. The weird thing is I don't understand how it works, right? For example, iron stores physical weight, so you have to give some weight up to store weight, right? Yeah. But when you're storing memories, does that mean like he just is ultra forgetful? He forgets his name. He forgets he has a metal mind.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
I kind of always wondered that, right?
Yeah.
That's it. I think there are pieces in the book where he kind of describes the feeling a bit, in that memories or things he dumps into a metal bind, he can remember enough to recall them, but not specifics at all. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it kind of like...
Yeah, because
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's kind of like Teravingian, where he's like really smart, and then the next day he's really dumb. Is it kind of like that opposite, where when you store your strength, you get all skinny and frail, and then when you're normal, you go back to normal, right? Is it kind of like that, where your brain shrinks or your memories aren't there? I don't know. Seems like there would be that opposite effect like you talked about, Mark.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to find it, because we never see his effect, right? We see what happens, you got to do weight, and we see that in the later books. But so then bronze stores wakefulness for like you just sleep for 10 days.
Yeah. So I think so. Yeah.
Right. Stores warmth. You freeze. Stores so zinc, right, stores mental speed. So I guess you're just like 2 + 2 takes you an hour to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, sorry, I'm just kidding. So, and then some of these kind of get different. Like, so tin stores senses, which is cool, but I don't know how it works. Iron stores physical weight. And some of these we see in the Wax and Wane series, right? Mm-hmm. Pewter physical strength, so you'll see people just be weak as can be, and the next thing they know, they're strong. Now, the cool thing with it is you can kind of like flare it, right? Kind of like they do with Allomancy, right? So say like, and it's kind of a 1-for-1 give. So if I go weak for an hour, I can be strong for an hour, but I could be extra strong for 20 minutes, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like if I reduce my strength by 50% for an hour, I'll be 150% strength for an hour. But I could be 200% strength for 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a part in the book with Sazed and Marsh when they went to go to that place, that cavern. Like he jumps off the cliff and he stores his weight, so then he just kind of floats down instead of falling. It's like, how do you do that? How do you change your mass? Gravity doesn't work on you.
Yeah, kind of weird. So I don't know. There's some cool characteristics.
Yeah.
I don't like. It doesn't explain itself very well, and that's why I don't like it. Is that you say that this is how you do it, this is the result, but then like there's certain things, like for example the metal mines, that just doesn't correlate very well. You have the spiritual metals, and these ones are tough, right? And these get really deep. So I'll just mention them. I think going into them is a little much right now, until we get to the Wax and Wane series. But like you've got chromium, aluminum, duralumin, gold, electrum, and those all store like health, determination, connection, identity. The identities one's actually pretty cool when you read into it. I don't know if you guys have read into it. So
that one is actually really cool. That's way cool.
Yeah.
Is that what Wayne uses when he's always like pretending to be someone else, or is that just
no? He's a blood maker. He uses gold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he stores health, right? And he can only do that. I think the whole thing about the identity with him is that he's just learned to mimic really well, right? He's not really but because his goes deeper than that, right? Because he doesn't just pretend to be a rich, smart person. He actually becomes a rich, smart person, right? Like he mimics that perfectly.
Yeah.
Right. I think identity is kind of what they use to store. I think it's a combination of that and nigrosil to make portable metal mines. Right. And so, because we read in the later books, right, that the one people to the south are able to make portable metal mines, because the one thing about metal mines is that they're specific to the person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't use somebody else's metal mines. Right.
Yeah. Well, and then there's a way to make them that you can, right? Like take the bands of mourning. Bands of mourning are metal, but anybody can use them.
Right.
So they're not identity specific.
Right. And I think that happens with aluminum and nigrosil, so that they can make them portable. So somehow, like the bands of mourning are using those. And so, anyways, no, agreed.
Okay. So that's kind of the basics about the Feruchemy. I don't know.
Feruchemy.
I know. So it's a pretty cool thing. I like it. I don't think we really get to see a good rounded out, what it has to offer, until later in the books series. But we get to see, Sazed and stuff like that, which is pretty neat. If I had to compare it against Allomancy, 1 for 1, I would say Allomancy is better, because I feel like I could carry more like pewter for strength on me than you would have stored, because like you could only store metal mines so much, and like what are you carrying, 100 metal mines on you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I could carry a lot of vials, what I mean?
Yeah.
As is.
Wasn't there a part in the last book where Vin was like, let me ingest a piece of your metal mine and try to burn it and see what happens? But then nothing happened. But I think that comes into play later though, right?
Yeah. So something happened. Yeah, nothing happens, and there's a reason. It's because like it's an alloy and it traps it inside, so you can't burn it. But if you break it and it's one of, it's not person specific, or even if it is person specific, then you can use out of the broken piece, if that makes sense. So say I break half, one in half, I still have access to half in two different parts.
Yeah.
Right. So I could use half of this one, then half of that one. Or if I broke it into 10 pieces, there'd be 10% in each one.
Mm-hmm.
For a feruchemist or for an...
Yeah, for a feruchemist.
Okay.
So if you've got one that's non-specific in identity, and I steal 30% of your thing, I can utilize 30% of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And you only have access to 70. Trying to think what else.
Yeah. Well, I think we really see Feruchemy in the Wax and Wane series. Like as you were talking about, I was like, yeah, they mostly use Feruchemy with some Allomancy kind of mixed in.
Yeah. Now, I think, honestly, a twin-born. This is going to cause I think a twin-born is better, depending on the mixes, but I think a twin-born is better than a Mistborn.
Ooh, yeah. I can see where you're coming from. Yeah, it depends on the
mix.
Yeah, the mix, but yeah, because half the stuff as a Mistborn you don't even use or even really need. It's cool, but you don't really need it.
But like Miles' 100 Lives, he's taken down any Mistborn because he's not gonna. He doesn't die, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think that Wayne takes down most Mistborns. For sure, because he's just gonna let him get close to kill him, and then he'll heal himself while he does his business.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that I think a twin board better than a Mistborn because they focus 100% on these two and they 100% make them. Whereas I think most Mistborns are really good at the pull, push and pull, and then pretty lackadaisical at everything else.
Do you think, what about a Mistborn burning Atium? Does a Mistborn burning Atium take out a Twinborn?
If the Twinborn knows, yes. And this is why I say if they know. Because we saw in the book, when Vin was fighting Zane, she let her mind go empty and beat him, because then the Atium could not predict what he would do because she had no plan.
Yeah.
She wasn't thinking of it. And so she tricked it, right? And so if a twin board knows they have Atium, yes. If they don't, no.
No, that's fair. I could agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Allomancy as a whole is better than Feruchemy, but if you combine the right mix, what if there's a full-born Mistborn with access to all Feruchemy? Is that even possible?
Say
What if there's a full Mistborn, can use all the metals, and also all the Feruchemy qualities? Is that even possible, do you think?
Wasn't the Lord Ruler like that?
Was he?
Yeah, because
No.
he... Really? I thought he was. Couldn't he? Because he can use all the Allomantic powers, and then he used a variety... And he was Terrace, right? Ancient Terrace.
Yeah.
And so he had all Feruchemy.
But
He was not... He did not use... maybe he did use Hemalurgy on himself. I don't know.
Did he have spikes? I don't remember.
No,
He didn't have spikes. I don't think so.
but he did have the bands of mourning.
Yeah.
I don't think he had spikes, which is weird when you think about it. So I
But he
say
had-
yes only because you can use spikes to make it happen.
Yeah.
So yes, I can see a Mistborn with
Well, he
all
had
the...
earrings and stuff like digging into his skin, which is kind of the spike idea, right?
Oh, here you go. Rashik is a Terraceman from Scadrial, known as the Lord Ruler, the Sliver of Infinity, and the Father. He has access to the full range of abilities of both the Feruchemist and an Allomancer, and has hemalurgic spikes in his body. Where does he have hemalurgic spikes?
I think it's just like with Vin, she had the earring in her ear, so that was technically hemalurgy. I think it's something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the metal kind of digging into his skin. the earrings and stuff.
Because he definitely created hemalurgic constructs.
Yeah, he created
The Koloss and the Contra and the Inquisitors, like all of it, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know he...
Well, you think he'd be all spiked out if it's that, because those Inquisitors, they're powerful.
Oh, yeah.
So why didn't he do something similar to himself?
Maybe he didn't need it because he had Allomancy and Feruchemy?
Yeah, no one else really did.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that could be it. Just wasn't needed at the time. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think Allomancy, a 1-to-1, like you said, is more powerful.
I agree.
Yeah. 1-to-1, but yeah, I think overall, I think a Twinborn wins.
Yeah.
But that's a little bit of both, so it's like a middle ground.
Yeah. Well, I wonder what's going to be the situation in the next series, right? The Mistborn Third Age.
Isn't that supposed to take place in like the 80s or something?
Yeah.
The equivalent of the 80s on Earth?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how far into the future, but it's definitely more futuristic than what we've seen. So that'll be really interesting to see what the next level is. So, yeah.
Well, and then it's kind of cool when you read into it. Take a good read into it sometime because it actually talks about how it mixes with other magic systems in the universe.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think we'll definitely have that conversation at some point in the future. Because that's really intriguing. Cool. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Are you able to stick around or do you need to go?
I probably need to go.
Okay.
I've got to get up I've got to be up like at 3:30.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. We'll say goodbye to you. We'll cut this part out. We'll say goodbye to you, and then we'll just transfer over to the 2-screen mode. So. Okay.
Right, sorry, guys.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Mark. We know you got to go. You got to run. Got stuff to do. So we'll talk next time. Mistborn Book 3. But yeah. Take care, Mark.
All right. We'll see you guys.
See you later.
All right. So that's Feruchemy, and we'll get into the next one, Hemalurgy, next time, and probably do like a combination, how they all can work together or not. So cool. So one of the things that I liked and also thought fell short was the whole Vin versus Zane and Elend love triangle. I liked that there was like a bad Mistborn that she had to duel against constantly. Because in the last book, we just got, what's her name? Sean Ilariel.
Yep.
They had their duel, but it was pretty quick. And then it was over. And so here we got pretty much multiple segments, First, they were just kind of playing around, like testing each other out, seeing how strong they were, that sort of thing, right? But then right off the bat, Vin became disadvantaged because she ran out of atium, but Zane did not. So kind of like what Mark mentioned earlier, where she's able to guess at some point and figure it out.
Right.
So as far as the love interest, Zane was interested in her. And she wasn't, but then she was, and then she wasn't, and then she was. Say, no, I love Elend, but he's different than me, and that whole thing. And I don't know. It just got very Smallville or Friends type thing where it's like, just talk to each other. Just have a conversation with Elend about how you feel and what you're thinking.
Gotta have that teenage drama, though.
Yeah.
Teenage drama.
I mean, it's good up to a point, but then it's just frustrating.
Yeah.
So I think that's what got to me the most is like, oh, come on, he's a bad guy. He's killed people, like she's killed people, but not like in cold blood type thing where he has, and he's a bad guy. Is he the bad boy? I mean, some girls like the bad boy. Is that what it was? You think?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that appeal. I am not a teenage girl, so I don't have that experience.
Yeah,
but I've heard.
Yeah, my wife told me she likes the bad boy. No, and he's like Elend's, bad boy side, right? He looks like him a little bit, but he's not. So anyway, I didn't really buy into it that much. Like I said, I liked it at first, but then I didn't really buy into it. And I kind of wish there was the evil Mistborn would have been Sean or someone, because that would have set up another love triangle, right? Because it kind of was that in the first book. But it's kind of like the Darth Maul syndrome. Sean is Maul. Really cool character. You see Maul throughout the episode 1, Star Wars episode 1. And he's like, oh yeah, he's pretty cool. And you're like, oh, she's pretty cool as far as being the bad guy. But then Maul dies and you're like, oh, why'd you kill him off? He was really cool. And that's kind of how I thought about Sean. It's like, why'd you kill her off so soon? Because if she would have been able to come back and be that evil Mistborn, and then you got those two sparring, and then maybe she's trying to win Elend over, and Vin's jealous, and I don't know. It would have been more intriguing for me anyway. I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that.
No, I could see that.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. So, but we got into kind of her thoughts about how she views herself. There was a lot of that, and then just how she felt Elend is not the right person for her. We also get his viewpoint where he's not good enough for her. So again, teenage drama. But I did like how they dueled there at the end, where they finally took the gloves off and had it out, and he was stronger than her, right? At the end of the day, he was pretty powerful. But there was this piece that all throughout that his side of the story was he was hearing God's voice. He thought it was God, right?
Yep.
And so he's like, and God's always telling him, kill him, kill her, do this. It was always kill someone, right?
Yep.
So, and he wouldn't. Sometimes he did, but like he was always kill your dad, and he wouldn't. He would kind of play that poison game with him.
Right.
And then at the end, when he does die, we get his point of view of him dying, and the voice says something to him. You never were crazy.
Yeah.
You know, you're not crazy.
Right.
He's like, what? And then he dies. So what do you think that voice was? Was that ruin or?
It was totally ruin.
Okay.
Totally ruin. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I even think, don't we find out later that he was spiked to a certain extent?
Maybe. I don't remember.
I mean, because obviously that's the direct conduit through which Ruin could talk to him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going to have to look that up.
I think he was, yeah. But yeah, but that was kind of the ultimate slap in the face. It's like, dude, you're not crazy this whole time.
Yeah. Partly thanks to a hemalurgic spike lodged in his heart.
Okay.
And so.
Yeah. There you go.
Not crazy.
Yeah.
Just hemalurgic.
Yeah. Yeah. So another clue along the way because ultimately we don't know. We know that Vin has the earring, right?
Yep.
And that's her spike.
Yep.
But we don't realize the effect of that. At least I didn't until you get to the end.
Right.
Of the trilogy, or towards the end of the trilogy.
Right. Because at this point, you have no idea how that works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's interesting that he was. So, okay. But other than that, overall, I like the story. The political stuff we talked about, how it was kind of slow, but it was still good, still intriguing, interesting. As far as your take on this book as a whole, what do you think?
I think it was good, particularly if you're a fan of political intrigue. You know, I think there's a lot of story building that happens in this. A lot of why questions are answered. You know, and I think you need that to have a complete series, right?
Yeah.
I do wish that it was a little bit more spread out as opposed to concentrated all in one book, you know?
Yeah.
But again, like you mentioned earlier, it's not that it was poorly written. It's very well written, and I think it's very interesting. But if you're a fan of action and excitement 100% of the time, this book's probably going to be a little bit difficult, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but if you're patient and you can, you know, get into the intrigue and understand the political sway that's in place in order to kind of set us up for the major changing events that happened in book 3, it's a good book. It really is a good book. And so, again, I think it's something that, fans of the Cosmere should read, just to get a better understanding of, one, who Elend is, right? And his personal idiosyncrasies, and what, in my opinion, makes a good leader. I think in this book, you get an excellent picture of what an ideal leader should be, particularly from the teachings of Tindwyl to Elend, right? Because Elend has the makings of a good leader at the beginning of the book, but he is far from it.
He has a great character arc.
He really does. He really does. He's very, and it's something I think that's in kind of society as a whole nowadays. We have a lot of idealists in society.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they have great ideas and things that
in theory
could work, but they never do, Yeah. And Elend is very similar to a lot of the idealists in today's day and age. And Tindwyl is able to take his idealism and not destroy it, right, but shape it into something that can actually make a difference in the world of Scadrial, right? And so, in my opinion, it's probably a lot of political intrigue. There's not as much action as I would like. But if you want a recipe for how to be a good leader, you find it in this book.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And Elend takes center stage with Vin in this story, whereas before he was a tertiary character, maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe even less. But Kelsier moving on from the story kind of opens that up for him to step in and, take that role, that leadership role. And he does struggle with the crew at first. So they're all just kind of, they don't really respect him, like his name, and they call him by his name instead of like Your Highness or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole growth that he has to do, like you talked about. And Tindwyl did a great job of challenging him and making him mad enough to stand up for himself and all that.
Right.
Which is good. So, okay. Overall, I give this book kind of similar grade. I'd probably give it an 8. There was action. Like the last part of the book was pretty exciting with the battles and stuff, and the well, and the scenes at the well.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, let's move into the top 5 segment. This time we're going to do the top 5 fantasy series. We'll see if this one makes the list, Mistborn. So, for me, there's some honorable mentions. The Codex Alera series by Jim Butcher is great. It might even have made the list, but I haven't read it for probably over 5 years, probably 7-8 years. But it's really good. I enjoyed it. The King Killer Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss, I think is on a lot of people's lists, but it's unfinished. So how can it be in the top 5?
Come on, Patrick. Finish those books, dang it.
Yeah, quit doing what you're doing. And the same with George R. Martin, right? Song of Ice and Fire. It's like, I used to have dreams that this book came out and I went and bought it like 10 years ago.
It's never going to happen. It's never. George and Patrick are going to die, and then nothing's going to come out.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have to pull a Robert Jordan and have Brandon Sanderson actually come finish their crap for them.
Yeah. I don't think Brandon can do Song of Ice and Fire.
No, I don't think he can.
Yeah.
I don't think he can.
Because that's pretty good as it is. Number 5 for me is a what do you call it? Nostalgic choice. It's one of the first series that got me into fantasy as a young teen, and it is the Shannara series by Terry Brooks. The first book, Sword of Shannara, is basically a Lord of the Rings ripoff. In the sense, like how Jordan is, like there's those elements that are there that are like, oh yeah, that's from Lord of the Rings, right? In that Eye of the World book.
Shannara Chronicles?
That's a TV show that came out based on the series, which was terrible. But it did give us Austin Butler. That was one of his first roles, if not his first role.
There we go.
He played an elf in that. That's a half elf in that series.
Oh man, I have to check that out. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah. So it's at this point, I think it's like over 20 books.
Wow.
First one was a trilogy, and then a quadrilogy, and then a trilogy, and then a prequel, and then a prequel trilogy. Just kind of, he was jumping all over the time, like, oh, I want to write about this. And so eventually he got to the point where it's like, this is my last trilogy and my last book, and there's pieces of the story that are still unfinished.
Okay.
And I think he's gone back. Like, he tried to branch out and do something else, and I'm sure they're good books, but no one read them because they're not Shannara. Yeah. So, I think he's gone back to Shannara, but very nostalgic for me.
Okay.
So that's why it's number 5. Not the best, but I like it. Next up, number 4 is Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. You can't really say it's fantasy in the sense of all these things that we're talking about, but it's fantasy.
Yep.
It's urban fantasy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't read Jim Butcher, it's very adult, but very well done. I would say TV-14R.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Dresden Files is awesome, though.
Yeah. Again, a crappy TV series was created.
Don't watch the TV series.
Don't watch that one either. But I think Dresden Files is up to 20 as well, pretty close to 20 books. They're shorter. Too bad Mark is not here because that's his favorite, if one of his favorites, and not his ultimate favorite series.
Yeah.
So, and we've talked about that a lot. So, number 3 for me is Stormlight Archive. It is technically unfinished in the sense, but there's 4 books. They're like over 1,000 pages each.
Yeah.
So in book 5, which is like halfway point, finishes that 5-book arc, is done basically.
Right.
So it's finished in my mind. We just haven't read book 5 yet.
I don't know. That's pretty high. Okay. I can see that. That's kind of high for me. I like it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I like it, but ooh. All right, well, keep going. Keep going.
Number 2, I don't know. I felt like I had to include this series on the list because if I don't, it's not a legit list. Lord of the Rings.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And I love it. I've read it multiple times. Obviously, the movies and all that stuff. Big time Lord of the Rings fan. But I can't say it's my favorite. I could probably bump it down to number 5 and be happy, but I still felt like it had to be at the top.
That's pretty blasphemous, putting Lord of the Rings towards number 5.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the thing is,
he didn't mean it, folks. Just
if you compare, like, I get the literature value it brings to the world and the way it's written. Tolkien as an author, amazing. However, it's dated in the sense that it's kind of like watching a movie from the 60s. It could be a great movie, but it's pretty different than what we're seeing nowadays.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's kind of the take I have on it. Like, great story, but a lot of slow pace, a lot of walking and camping and stopping. That I think that's what kind of brings it down for me. Mm-hmm. But so that's my take on it. And then number 1 is Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. I tried to think of something to put above that because that is pretty cliche, but I can't think of anything.
And not the TV show.
Again.
Not the TV show.
Yeah.
Good Lord, not the TV show.
Yeah.
The books, though.
Books.
Top notch.
What is it? 15 books.
Yeah. Yeah. With the prequel there.
The prequel, yeah. Okay, what do you think, Kyle? You've gave some commentary on my list, on my choices. What would you say your top 5 is? Which is fine. I mean,
no, I mean, a lot of my top 5 are going to be are basically the same as yours. Lord of the Rings, man, that at number. What did you put that? Number 2?
3, 2.
2. Okay, yeah. For me, yeah, Lord of the Rings or Wheel of Time. Those are definitely my top 2 for sure. It kind of gets. Kind of vague from there. I've really enjoyed a variety of different ones. I'm actually reading the Dresden Files right now, and so that one I'd probably say is probably a number 5 for me so far. It's been really, really interesting. Mm-hmm. Really liked that one. Some honorable mentions are very much similar to yours. King Killer Chronicles, that's great. Song of Ice and Fire, also an honorable mention. Gentleman Bastard series, another honorable mention for me. Like it, but not enough to make my top 5. Also, a lot of the books by Robin Hobb.
Yeah, she's good.
She's really good. So you have your Farseer trilogy, The Fitz and the Fool, all that stuff. That's great stuff. Really enjoyed those.
Yeah, I haven't read those for a while.
But I think that so I said Lord of the Rings, and I said Wheel of Time, Dresden Files. The Stormlight Archive is in there as well. And then, I would probably say the Mistborn Era 2 is in there.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
And so now, I mean, it's tough for me because there's some great books by Joe Abercrombie as well, with the First Law series and other things like that. Those are fantastic if you're looking for more like brutal action and fantasy and lots of, I'd say that one is like we said, the Dresden Files is like 14R. That one's like like R
hard
plus
R.
hard R.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those are probably so not too different from yours.
Yeah.
Not too different from yours.
Yeah. And I was trying to think of other books to put on the list because these are pretty standard. I bet you could talk to a lot of fantasy fans, and these books would be on the list in some form, whether or not it's the same order. But so I was like, what else is out there? So if you guys that are listening, watching, if you know of any fantasy series we're missing that we should try, comment on it. Let us know, because I'm all about some new stuff.
Well, and I know I've talked to some of you guys who say you listen to our podcast that say that there are way better fantasy series. So you better put it in the comments so we can read them.
Yeah, definitely. I'm up for that. So I haven't read a good new fantasy series for a while.
Neither have I.
Unfortunately.
Well, Harry Dresden. I am reading the Dresden Files.
Yeah.
And I know that's dated, right? But still.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Thanks, Jim Butcher.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our top 5. Let us know yours in the comments. Hot take. Today's hot take. We kind of alluded to it already, but recently George R. Martin made some comments in Variety, or at least Variety's reporting it, that he made it on his blog, which I used to read back when he was actually writing books. I used to go there and get updates, and he's got a pretty cool writing style. I kind of like it.
When he was actually writing books.
Yeah, now I guess he's still writing book 5. I don't know how often, but he says he's working on it. So he took to his personal blog to talk about Hollywood adaptations and screenwriters' attempts to make source material their own. So I think that's a valid concern I have with how he talked about the Wheel of Time TV show, the Shannara TV show, the Dresden Files TV show.
Rings of Power.
I actually like that, though. It's not amazing, but I like it.
Oof.
So this is what he says. He initially talked to Neil Gaiman back in 2022.
Oh, yeah.
And he followed up with that because someone asked him about it. Things have gotten worse since 2022. Everywhere you look, there are more screenwriters and producers eager to take great stories and make them their own, in quotation marks. It does not seem to matter whether the source material was written by Stan Lee, Charles Dickens, Ian Fleming, J.R.R. Tolkien, pretty distinguished list. But no matter how major a writer it is, no matter how great the book, there always seems to be someone on hand who thinks he can do better, eager to take the story and, quotes, improve on it. The book is the book, the film is the film, they will tell you, as if they were saying something profound. Then they make the story their own. They never make it better. 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse. Once in a while, we get a really good adaptation of a really good book, and when that happens, it deserves applause. And he was referring to the recent Shogun series that FX did. It looks like he really liked that. So I 100% agree with him.
100% 100%.
So I don't know how much of a hot take it is, but it's a definitely, at least for us, because we agree with that.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And if any of you guys are filmmakers, for goodness sakes,
Yeah.
just stick to the book.
Yeah.
Stick to the book.
Yeah. I mean, Lord of the Rings got it right.
They got it right.
There were some changes here and there.
But they didn't fundamentally change the story.
Didn't fundamentally change story, overall story. You knew what was going on. Like, I had read the books multiple times by then, but I was totally entertained by this movie, even though I knew what was going to happen.
They put all political ideologies aside. In fact, I think Peter Jackson, like right when they started, explicitly said that they were going to tell the story of Lord of the Rings, right? And they did. They did a phenomenal job. And I totally, and I don't see eye to eye with George R.R. Martin on a lot of things because, come on, man, where's the last book or where's the next book? But he is 100% right here.
Yeah.
100% right. I think there needs to be more trust put into the writers that have developed a huge fan base for their books because there's a reason. There's a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's a reason why Lord of the Rings did so well.
Yep.
Built-in fan base. It was there for the taking, and they took it. And with a writer, they spend time developing their story. There's hours and hours and weeks and months put into this story. So why do the screenwriters feel like they can just come in and, I don't like this, so I'm going to do this in like a couple of days' time? Do you think there's a lot of pride in that? So like, I'm going to make it better with these screenwriters and script writers and things like that? Or maybe you mentioned political ideologies. I know that's been a big thing, whether you agree with it or not, but that's a big thing in movies. We got to make these changes because we don't live in that world anymore, especially in fantasy, which is typically male, white, straight relationships. I don't know. Do you think there's an agenda as far as I'm going to make it better?
I think it's a lack of material,
Okay.
right? I think if we had more material that not developers, but filmmakers and writers knew would attract audiences, we wouldn't be in this type of situation. I mean, you think back to films in the past. Every film in the past represents the political ideology of the time, right? Yeah. You think about all of them do. I mean, all the way back since filmmaking was a thing, right? And so they all carry an element of whatever the political ideology was at the time. And so I think what's lacking in today's adaptations, right, of film for film books to film, is that that's all there is, right? You try to think of any original content from the TV and film industry, and it's severely lacking.
Yeah.
Right? They are turning to anything they can get to get original content that people are interested in, right? And so consequently, when they get their hands on an IP like Star Wars or the Wheel of Time or Lord of the Rings or anything that has a dedicated fan base, they're so starved to make their own thing, and they're so stuck in, like, I don't want to say like writer's block, but maybe filmmaker's block, right?
Yeah.
They're so stuck on the lack of ideas that they have to, quote unquote, poach what the writers have tried to do and try to make their own content. And it ends up flopping on their face all the time because, you first of all, you alienate the fan base.
Yeah.
And then second of all, you take something that was a good story and well thought out and very well communicated, and you screw it up because you don't think it through, right? You skip things that shouldn't be skipped. You change things that shouldn't be changed, and you screw up the universe. And so not only do you alienate fans, you create something that doesn't make sense and ultimately fails. And so
Yeah. I think that's some really good points there, because how many sequels, remakes have we had in the past couple years?
Yeah.
Tons.
Tons.
And they're going to remake Lord of the Rings. That's on the agenda. They're developing that now.
Mm-hmm.
They're remaking Harry Potter. I think it's going to be a TV show, like a streaming show.
Right.
But still,
it's going to be terrible.
yeah. It's like, okay. And yeah. So I think it's just, they are starved for content and they're not, I don't know, smart. I don't think smart enough is the right word, but creative enough maybe to create something new.
And that's the thing, is you can create amazing things, right? That fit political ideology, whatever political ideology that you're, or background or whatever.
Yeah.
And people will flock to it if it's well written and creative.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree.
There's so much mythology and so many stories in the whole world that would be fantastic to see on the big screen. You know?
Yeah.
You know, let's start building some of that.
Yeah, I agree. So that's our hot take. I think it's 100% accurate. I'd like to see original content. I don't want to go watch, I mean, I probably will, but I don't want to go watch Lord of the Rings 2.0.
Right. Exactly.
Because it's not going to have the same magic. Because part of it was like, finally, it's on the big screen. Finally, we get to see this story play out, live action.
Right.
And now it's like, oh, okay, it's out again. What's going to be different? How's it going to be different? And is the difference going to sit with me?
Yeah.
Going to, strike home? We don't know. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I do like what they did with Rings of Power in the sense that, hey, let's pull from the material these ideas and create another story. Whether they executed it or not is up for debate, but they didn't just redo the story, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and I can appreciate that. And that's been okay. But like with things like the Wheel of Time, I'm sorry, guys, you messed that up.
yeah, I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Why do they even call it Wheel of Time at this point?
No, it's totally different.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, so next up, we will be talking Mistborn Book 3, Hero of Ages. And we'll get the conclusion of Vin and Elend and Sazed and all the crew. See what happens there with Spook. I listen to the audiobooks and I had no problem with Spook until I started hearing someone say Spook, Spook, Spook. Like, this is a weird name.
That's true. That's true.
And then I noticed in book 2, there's a lot of frowning going on.
There's a lot of frowning.
Like Vin frowned. Ellen frowned. It's like, because there's like this conversation or this statement, and then it's like Vin frowned.
Yeah.
Like that's the sentence.
Yeah.
So it starts to stand out. They frowned. This person frowned. It's like, oh, okay. So they're not very happy in this story.
No.
So I thought that was funny. But anyway, book 3, the conclusion of Mistborn Era 1. We'll get into Era 2 at some point, and then Stormlight. We'll just keep going as we keep reading. So we want to thank you guys for joining us. And again, like and subscribe to the channel. Helps us out a lot. Doesn't cost you anything. We won't spam you. I don't know how we would, but we'll try to make this relationship profitable for you. But stay tuned, and we'll catch you guys next time.
All right. Thanks. We'll see you.